This is just Vesper. She stays in our damp basement and helps out with chores, my stepmother told the catering staff, smiling like she was apologizing for a dirty stain on the floor. My father nodded, adding, "We let her stay to learn how the real world works." Everyone heard it. I heard it louder than all of them. What my family didn't know, what they never once bothered to ask, was that I had just uncovered their massive federal fraud. And that lawyer sitting right at table 1? Yeah, I was about to press a button that would drain every last drop of color from my father's face. Before I go on, if this story speaks to you, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? I need to tell you who I was before the silver trays were polished and before the family lawyer, Mr. Thorne, cleared his throat at the dinner table. I was 26 years old, working as an event manager for Harbor and Oak Planners down on Granby Street in Norfolk, Virginia. But to my family, I was just the free labor living in their damp basement on Elmwood Avenue. It was Friday, November 12th. The backstage prep room at the Norfolk Botanical Garden banquet hall smelled like crushed eucalyptus and nervous sweat. I had a heavy metal clipboard pressed against my chest, staring blindly at a $6,500 catering invoice that my father, Merrick, had somehow forgotten to sign. The heavy wooden door swung open, hitting a stack of folded chairs with a loud clatter. My stepmom, Cressida, walked in. She wore a tailored emerald gown that cost more than my car. "Vesper, honey, the lighting in the main hall is making my skin look terribly yellow," Cressida said. She was busy checking her reflection in a smudged service mirror and didn't even look in my direction. "Fix it, and tell the waiters to stop pouring the cheap champagne. The mayor is sitting at table 4. The lighting is set to warm amber, Cressida. It matches the autumn theme you picked out," I said, my voice quiet. I picked up a roll of green floral tape from a plastic crate, and we only ordered 3 bottles of the good champagne, just for the head table. Cressida sighed. It was a long, heavy sound meant to make me feel very small. She finally turned to me, her eyes slowly dropping to my plain black work blazer. "This is our 20th anniversary, Vesper. Your father and I just want one perfect night. Is it really too much to ask that you handle these tiny details? We let you stay in our house so you can save money, sweetheart. The least you can do is make sure my evening isn't ruined by cheap lighting." She made it sound like a grand favor. The basement had black mold behind the drywall, the heating barely worked, and I paid her $800 on the first of every month as a utility contribution. But I kept quiet. I needed this event to go flawlessly. Harbor and Oak was considering me for a promotion to senior director next month. Plus, Cressida had promised to introduce me to the city council members tonight if I pulled this whole party off for free. I needed those connections to start my own business. Just then the door opened again. Tierney, my 22-year-old stepsister, drifted into the room. She was holding a half-eaten chocolate strawberry. "Mom, my feet hurt," Tierney whined, leaning against a steel catering cart. Cressida's face instantly softened, the sharp, cold edges of her jaw completely relaxed. "Oh, my poor baby. Did you wear the Prada heels? I told you they need breaking in. Sit down. Vesper, grab your sister a chair, and get her some water with lemon." I was holding the master event timeline, 2 walkie-talkies and a broken table centerpiece. I slowly set them down on a table and pulled out a folding chair. "Thanks," Tierney muttered, her eyes glued to her phone screen. "Are the photographers ready? I need some solo shots by the floral arch before the guests ruin the flowers." "Of course, darling," Cressida cooed, gently brushing a stray hair behind Tierney's ear. "You look absolutely stunning. Did you show your father?" "Yeah. He said I looked just like you did at my age." I handed Tierney the water. Nobody asked how my feet felt after running around the venue since 5 a.m. Nobody asked why I had dark circles under my eyes. I was just the background noise, the invisible machine that made their perfect family picture look flawless to the outside world. A small hand tugged on my blazer pocket. I looked down. It was Calloway, my 9-year-old stepbrother. His bow tie was crooked, and his white dress shirt had a faint juice stain near the collar. "Vesper, I'm hungry," he whispered, looking nervously at his mother. Before I could reach into my bag for the granola bar I always kept hidden for him, Cressida snapped her fingers. "Calloway, stand up straight. Don't bother your sister. She's already struggling with the simple event schedule. Go find your father right now." "But Mom," "Now, Calloway." Cressida's voice wasn't loud, but it was cold enough to freeze water. It was the exact tone she used when she reminded us all who controlled the house. Calloway dropped his head and scurried out of the room. I felt a tight knot in my stomach. I stayed in that basement, enduring the passive-aggressive comments and the endless demands, mostly to make sure Calloway had at least one person who looked at him like a human being, not a photo prop. "Right," Cressida said, smoothing her gown one last time. "I'm going back out to our guests. Vesper, fix the lights, and stay out of the official family photos tonight, please. Your outfit just doesn't match the color palette, and we want it to look cohesive for the Society magazine." She smiled, a perfectly polished hollow smile. "You understand, right, sweetheart? It's just for the aesthetic." "I understand," I said, looking at the floor. The door clicked shut behind them. I stood alone in the cramped room, the smell of wilting flowers heavy in the air. I knew exactly what my role was. But I didn't know that tonight, the rules of their perfect little game were about to change forever. To understand what happened tonight at the anniversary dinner, you need to know why my hands didn't shake when Cressida insulted me. You have to understand the version of me that died 8 months ago. It was Tuesday, March 3rd, 2023. It was raining hard, the kind of cold spring rain that chills your bones. I was standing inside the Coastal Union Bank on Main Street. My heart was beating fast with excitement. I was there to get a cashier's check for $12,000. It was the deposit for my very own office space. For 4 years I had worked 60-hour weeks. I saved every extra dollar I made from overtime and tips. I put it all into a high-yield savings account that my father Merrick had set up for me when I was 18. His name was still on it as a joint owner, but he always promised it was my future business fund. I had $48,500 in that account. It was my ticket to freedom. Opal, the older bank teller with kind eyes, typed on her keyboard. She frowned. She pressed a few more keys, her eyebrows pulling together. "Vesper, honey," Opal said gently, sliding her glasses down her nose. "There must be a mistake. You only have $14.50 in this account." I laughed, but my stomach dropped. "No, Opal, that's impossible. I deposited my paycheck just last Friday. There should be over $48,000. Opal turned her monitor slightly so I could see. "A wire transfer was made yesterday afternoon. The full amount, minus the minimum balance, was moved to a different account. The transfer was authorized by Merrick." I couldn't breathe. The air in the bank suddenly felt thick and heavy. I didn't say goodbye to Opal. I just walked out into the rain. I drove home to Elmwood Avenue in a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe the bank made an error. Maybe my dad moved it to protect it from a fraud alert. I held on to that tiny piece of hope. I unlocked the front door and walked into the kitchen. It smelled like fresh coffee and expensive vanilla candles. My father was sitting at the marble island, reading a sports magazine. Cressida was leaning against the counter, sipping from a mug. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking. My wet shoes squeaked on the hardwood floor. "I was just at the bank. The money in my savings account. It's gone. Did you move it?" Merrick froze. He didn't look up from his magazine. The silence in the kitchen stretched for 5 agonizing seconds. Cressida took a slow sip of her coffee. She set the mug down with a soft click. "We had to move it, Vesper. An emergency came up." I stared at her, then looked at my father. "What emergency?" "Dad, that was $48,000. That was my business money. Where is it?" Merrick finally looked up. His eyes were completely blank, completely hollow. "Tierney got into some serious trouble, Vesper. She maxed out 3 credit cards. They were going to sue her, and her car transmission died. She needed a reliable vehicle for her new internship." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I couldn't process the words. "You took my money? Every single penny I worked for, to pay off Tierney's shopping debt and buy her a car?" "Keep your voice down," Cressida said sharply. She crossed her arms. "Legally it was a joint account. Your father had every right to use it. Family helps family, Vesper. You live in our house. We needed those funds. I pay you $800 a month to sleep in a basement with mold," I screamed, tears finally spilling hot down my cheeks. "I worked double shifts for years. Dad, say something. Tell me you didn't steal my future for her." Merrick stood up, but he didn't step toward me. He actually took a step back, standing closer to Cressida. "Vesper, please don't be dramatic," Merrick said softly. He sounded annoyed, not sorry. "You are strong. You always figure things out. She's fragile. She doesn't know how to survive in the real world like you do. It's just money. You can earn it back." Right then, the last string holding my heart to him snapped. He didn't care about my hard work. He didn't care about my dreams. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was just a safety net. I was a bank account they could drain when the child they actually loved needed something. "You're right," I whispered. My voice was suddenly very calm. The tears stopped. A deep, cold emptiness washed over me. I do know how to survive. I turned around and walked down the narrow, creaky stairs to the basement. I didn't pack everything. I just grabbed a black duffel bag, threw in my work clothes, my laptop, and a small wooden box that belonged to my late mother. 10 minutes later, I walked back upstairs and out the front door. I didn't look back. I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot for 3 nights. I wonder why I endured their abuse for so long. Have you ever stayed in a toxic environment just because you hoped things might change, or for someone else's sake? Why do you think we do that? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments. That was 8 months ago. That was the day I stopped being Merrick's obedient daughter. And that is exactly why, tonight at the anniversary dinner, I was completely prepared to burn their perfect world to the ground. It was Thursday, April 16th. Exactly 6 weeks after I walked out of the house on Elmwood Avenue. I was sitting in a cracked red vinyl booth at the starving Spartan Diner on Colley Avenue, staring at my half-eaten grilled cheese sandwich. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and heavy frying oil. Across from me sat my Aunt Linnea, my father's older sister. Linnea was a kind woman, but she was deeply afraid of conflict. She hated arguments more than anything. Her hands shook as she tore open 2 small pink sugar packets and dumped them into her coffee. Her spoon clinked nervously against the cheap ceramic mug. "Vesper, you look so tired," Linnea said, her voice trembling slightly. She wouldn't look me in the eye. "Are you eating enough? Your father is very worried about you." "If he was worried, he wouldn't have drained my life savings, Aunt Linnea," I said. I kept my voice perfectly flat. I had cried all my tears in the Walmart parking lot weeks ago. I didn't have any left for her. Linnea closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead, looking pained. "Please don't use that word, honey. He didn't steal it. He panicked. You know how Cressida gets when things aren't perfect. She was so upset about Tierney's debts. Merrick just wanted to keep the peace in the house." I looked at her, really looked at her. Aunt Linnea knew the truth. She knew exactly how Cressida treated me. She knew Tierney was careless and spoiled. But Linnea, just like my father, chose to protect the fake peace instead of protecting me. It was easier to let me take the damage than to stand up to Cressida. "Keeping the peace meant breaking me," I said softly. I took a sip of ice water. The cold glass grounded me. "Is that why you asked me to meet you here? To tell me to come home and forgive them?" Linnea looked down at her lap. A deep blush of shame crept up her neck. She opened her brown leather purse and pulled out a thick yellowed envelope. She slid it across the sticky diner table toward me. "I'm giving you this because I can't sleep at night anymore," Linnea whispered. She looked around nervously, as if Cressida might be hiding behind the dessert display case. "When your mother died, Merrick boxed up her office. 5 years ago, he asked me to take some old boxes to the city dump. I dropped one, and this envelope fell out. The seal was already broken. I read it. I stared at the heavy paper. In the top left corner, faded black ink read, "Thorne and Cole, Legal Services." "What is this?" I asked, my heart beating a little faster. "Merrick always told everyone your mother left nothing behind but hospital bills," Linnea said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "That was a lie, Vesper. Your mother's grandfather owned a massive piece of commercial land near the shipping ports. When she died, it didn't go to your father. The trust clearly states it goes directly to you, but you can't claim it until you turn 27. My breath caught in my throat. I pulled the crisp, folded papers out of the envelope. The legal language was complicated, but the numbers at the bottom were crystal clear. The property was leased to a major shipping company. It generated thousands of dollars in rent every single month. "Where is this rent money going right now?" I asked. My hands weren't shaking at all. They were perfectly still. "Into a locked escrow account," Linnea said, a single tear falling down her wrinkled cheek. "Merrick and Cressida are completely broke, Vesper. They maxed out their credit cards to pay for Cressida's designer clothes, the luxury cars, the country club memberships. They are drowning in debt. They used your $48,000 just to keep the bank from taking the house." She reached out and touched my wrist. "They have been waiting for your 27th birthday next January. They plan to trick you into signing the property rights over to them so they can sell the land and pay off their debts." I sat back against the red vinyl seat. Everything suddenly made sense. They didn't see me as a daughter. I was just a walking bank account. They were holding on to me just long enough to steal my inheritance. Linnea squeezed my wrist. "Please, Vesper, don't start a war. Just walk away. You have your own life now. If you fight them, Cressida will destroy your reputation in this city. She knows all the important people." I gently pulled my arm away from her grip. I didn't feel hurt anymore. I didn't feel the sharp sting of betrayal. Instead, a cold, bright clarity washed over my mind. I wasn't going to run away. I was going to let them plan their perfect future. And then, I was going to tear it down, brick by brick. I'm not going to start a war, Aunt Linnea, I said. I carefully folded the legal papers and put them inside my bag. I stood up and dropped a $5 bill on the table for the coffee. I'm just going to finish the one they started. I walked out of the diner and into the bright April sunlight. I didn't have much time. I needed to build my own life, and I needed to find Mr. Thorne. It was Tuesday, May 19th. The air inside my new 200-square-foot office above a dry cleaner on 21st Street smelled heavily of chemical solvent and cheap vanilla air fresheners. I sat cross-legged on the bare wooden floor, eating a cold $2 slice of pizza. My laptop was balanced on a cardboard box. I was exhausted, running on maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, but the quiet in that empty room felt like a luxury. Nobody was yelling. Nobody was telling me my clothes were the wrong color. The heavy metal door squeaked open, and Torrin walked in. Torrin was a freelance systems architect I had hired 2 years ago for a corporate tech convention. He was carrying a tangle of gray Ethernet cables and 2 large iced coffees. "Your AWS server setup is finally stable," Torrin said, dropping a heavy router box onto the only real desk in the room. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "And the HTML front end for your event booking website is live. But we need to talk about the other thing." I wiped my greasy hands on a paper napkin and carefully pulled Aunt Linnea's yellow envelope out of my backpack. Over the last 2 months, Torrin had become my only lifeline. He wasn't just building my business network, he was helping me trace the digital footprints my father tried to hide. "Did you find out about the shipping company?" I asked, my heart beating a steady, focused rhythm. Torrin pulled up a folding chair and opened his laptop. He turned the screen toward me. I ran a deep check on the commercial property address on the paperwork. The company renting the land is Atlantic Freight. They pay $14,000 every single month in rent. But the money doesn't go to a standard bank. He pointed to a highlighted row on a spreadsheet. The rent goes directly into a private escrow account managed by a law firm. Thorne & Cole. I stared at the name on the screen. The pizza in my stomach suddenly felt like lead. Mr. Thorne was my father's Sunday golf partner. He was the man who always brought expensive wine to our Thanksgiving dinners. He was also the exact same lawyer who helped my father set up my joint savings account when I was 18, the account they had completely drained. "They planned this," I whispered, the realization settling into my bones like ice. "Thorne knows. He knows I am the legal owner of that land." Torrin nodded slowly. "I dug a little deeper into your dad's public financial records. Merrick and Cressida took out a massive, high-interest loan against the Elmwood Avenue house last month. They are totally broke, Vesper. They are using that loan just to pay their minimum credit card balances and keep up their country club memberships." I looked out the dirty window. The streetlights flickered in the evening rain. For a brief second, my mind drifted to Calloway. I remembered his crooked little bow tie and the way he used to hide behind my legs when Cressida started breaking plates in the kitchen. I missed him so much my chest physically ached. I wanted to call him, to sneak him a toy, but Cressida had completely blocked my phone number on his iPad. The isolation was a heavy, suffocating blanket. I was entirely alone, but I forced myself to look away from the window. Crying wouldn't get my life back. Missing Calloway wouldn't save him from growing up in that toxic house. I had to build something solid first. "They are buying time," I said, my voice steadying. "They are using the house loan to survive until January. When I turn 27, they need my signature to unlock the trust. If they can trick me into signing the property over, they can sell the land for millions, pay off the loan, and keep living their fake, perfect life." "Exactly," Torrin said softly, closing his laptop. "But right now, you are building your own event company. You are cold calling 50 vendors a day. You are surviving without them. That makes you dangerous to their plan. They need you poor, desperate, and living in their basement so you will sign whatever they put in front of you." I stood up and walked over to the desk. I placed my hand on the cold metal of the AWS server Torrin had just installed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to their abuse, I was miles ahead of them. "I need to meet with Mr. Thorne," I said, looking at the city lights through the rain. "But not as Merrick's naive daughter. I need to meet him as the sole heir to the Atlantic Freight property." Torrin smiled, a small, grim expression. "When?" "Not yet," I replied, packing the legal papers back into my bag. "I need to secure my business first. I need my own money in my own bank account. Let them think I am still broken. Let them think I am starving. We are going to let them build their perfect anniversary party in November, and then we are going to use their own lawyer to tear the whole house down. It was Thursday, August 14th. The brutal Virginia summer heat baked the brick walls of my little office on 21st Street. I was sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen. Torrin had built me a custom web application using an HTML dashboard and a Python backend. I was using it to merge different stock video clips of wedding venues, adjusting their durations and muting the audio tracks so I could play soft piano music over my client presentations. My business, Harbor and Oak, was finally breathing on its own. I had booked 4 weddings and a corporate retreat. I had $22,000 sitting safely in a new bank account under my name only. Then, the glass door of the dry cleaner downstairs chimed. Heavy footsteps marched up the wooden stairs. The door to my office swung open. It was Tierney. She was wearing a silk summer dress, but she looked exhausted. Her expensive blonde highlights were brassy at the roots. She carried a white leather Gucci bag, but as she stepped inside, I noticed the bottom of her high heel was peeling. The money was running out. "It smells like cheap laundry soap in here," Tierney said, waving her hand in front of her nose. She didn't say hello. She just looked around my small room, her eyes full of pity. "Dad said you were working in a closet." I guess he was right. I slowly clicked save on my video project and closed my laptop. I didn't feel the old familiar panic. I just felt tired. "What do you want, Tierney? It's 2 in the afternoon." She sighed and dropped her heavy bag onto Torrin's empty chair. "Mom is stressed out, Vesper. Their 20th anniversary dinner is in November. She tried to hire Elegance Events, but they wanted a $20,000 deposit. It's ridiculous. Mom has been crying for 2 days because she can't find anyone to manage the caterers and the lighting." Tierney leaned against my desk. She gave me a small, practiced smile. "Mom said she is willing to forgive you for running away. She said if you come back and plan the anniversary dinner, you can move back into the basement. You won't even have to pay the $800 for rent until January." I stared at her. My chest tightened, but not from sadness. It was from the sheer blinding reality of their manipulation. They weren't offering me forgiveness. They were offering me a job they couldn't afford to pay for, wrapped in a fake apology. They needed free labor to keep up their wealthy image in front of the city council and Mr. Thorne. "She wants me to plan a massive society dinner for free," I said, my voice quiet and smooth. "And my payment is getting my damp basement room back." "It's family, Vesper," Tierney snapped, her fake smile dropping instantly. "Dad is stressed, I'm stressed. You're being totally selfish. You know how important this dinner is for Mom's reputation. If she looks bad in front of the mayor, Dad's business contacts will dry up. We just need you to handle the vendors and the timeline." I looked past Tierney, out the dusty window. Down on the street, parked illegally by a fire hydrant, was my father's black SUV. The back window was rolled down 1/2 inch. I could barely see the top of a small head leaning against the glass. Calloway. He was sitting in the hot car while Tierney came up here to reel me back in. My hands curled into tight fists under the desk, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to run down there, pull Calloway out of that car, and drive far away. But I knew the law. I had no legal rights to him. If I wanted to protect him, I had to destroy the fake world Cressida and Merrick built. I had to get inside that anniversary dinner. "Okay," I said, letting out a long, defeated sigh. I forced my shoulders to slump, playing the part of the broken daughter they expected me to be. "I'll do it. I will plan the anniversary party." Tierney clapped her hands together, looking instantly relieved. "Oh, thank God. You have no idea how much trouble you just saved me. Mom was going to make me call the florists. But I have one condition," I said, looking right into her eyes. "I manage everything. I handle the contracts, I speak to the venue, and I talk directly to the guest list to confirm RSVPs. If my name is attached to this event, it has to be perfect. Tell Cressida to email me the vendor list." "Fine, whatever," Tierney said, picking up her bag. She was already looking at her phone screen again. "Just make sure the floral arch has white roses, not cream. Mom hates cream." She turned and walked out, her broken heel clicking loudly on the stairs. She didn't realize what she had just done. She had just handed me the master keys to their most important night. She had just given me the power to invite whoever I wanted, including a certain family lawyer. It was Wednesday, September 23rd. The autumn air in Virginia was starting to get crisp, but inside my office it just smelled like burnt espresso and old paper. My desk was completely covered in silver-embossed envelopes and thick cream-colored cardstock. I was handwriting the seating cards for the anniversary dinner, carefully using a calligraphy pen to make every single name look like a piece of art. Torin was sitting on the floor by the window, his laptop balanced on his knees. He had been quiet for almost 2 hours, just the rapid clicking of his keyboard breaking the silence. "Vesper," Torin said suddenly. His voice was tight. "I found it. I found why they suddenly want you back in that basement." I stopped writing. The ink from my pen slowly pooled onto a card meant for the city councilman. "What do you mean?" Tierney said they just wanted free event planning. Torin shook his head and carried his laptop over to my desk. He brought up a scanned PDF document. The top of the page had the official seal of the Virginia State Court. "I pulled the original public filing for your mother's trust," Torin explained, pointing to a dense paragraph of legal text. "You take full control of the commercial land and the rent money when you turn 27 in January. But look at this clause right here. Under the HEM standard, health, education, maintenance, and support, your father is legally listed as your primary care provider due to medical and residential dependencies they completely fabricated." I squinted at the screen. "What does that mean in normal English, Torin?" "It means that as long as you are considered a dependent living at his primary address, Elmwood Avenue, Merrick is legally allowed to withdraw a maintenance fee from your escrow account every month. The trust allows him to submit receipts to Mr. Thorne for $3,000 a month to supposedly cover your housing, medical bills, and care. Thorne approves the fake bills as the trustee and takes a cut." My stomach dropped. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. "He's been taking $3,000 a month from my mother's money to pay for my basement room, a room I was already paying him $800 a month in cash to sleep in?" "Yes," Torin said softly. "But here is the catch, Vesper. If you permanently move out, his custodial status becomes void. If the bank or the law firm finds out you haven't lived there for 6 months, Merrick and Thorne are committing federal wire fraud and fiduciary malpractice. He would have to pay it all back. And they don't have a single dollar to their name." I slowly sat back in my chair. The puzzle pieces violently snapped together. That was the real panic. That was why Cressida was willing to let me back into the house. They didn't just need a free party planner. They needed my physical body back in that house to cover up a federal crime before my 27th birthday. "And Mr. Thorne," I whispered, my throat feeling dry. "He manages the escrow account. Thorne is signing off on the monthly transfers," Torin confirmed. "He is protecting Merrick. As long as the paperwork looks clean, Thorne gets to keep his fat management fee from the trust too." I looked at the legal papers, then really looked. And I wondered, did my father ever actually love me? Or was I just a walking bank account in the perfect life he built for Cressida? Why does a parent choose to steal from their own child instead of admitting they failed? I still don't have the answer. Maybe you do. Let me know in the comments. I looked down at the stack of shiny silver invitations. I had to deliver the VIP invites by hand today. Mr. Thorne was at the very top of my list. An hour later, I was walking through the heavy, glass double doors of Thorne & Cole in downtown Norfolk. The lobby smelled like lemon furniture polish and expensive leather. A giant grandfather clock ticked loudly in the corner. It was a place designed to make regular people feel small and powerless. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, barely looking up from her monitor. "I'm Vesper. I have a personal delivery for Mr. Thorne from Merrick and Cressida," I said, keeping my voice soft and polite. A heavy wooden door opened down the hallway. Mr. Thorne stepped out. He was wearing a sharp navy suit, his silver hair perfectly combed. When he saw me, a tight, artificial smile spread across his face. "Vesper, sweetheart," he called out, walking over and placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. It took every ounce of strength I had not to pull away from his touch. "It is so good to see you. Your father told me you had a little rough patch, but you are finally moving back home where you belong. He's a good man, your father. Very forgiving." He was testing me. He was checking to see if I was still the blind, obedient girl who didn't know she was a millionaire. I looked down at my worn-out shoes, playing the part perfectly. "Yes, sir. I'm just trying to help with the anniversary dinner. I brought your VIP invitation. Cressida wants to make sure you sit at the head table." I handed him the thick silver envelope. He took it, his eyes scanning my tired face, my cheap blazer. He looked satisfied. He saw a broken girl who had crawled back to her family for a free meal. "Wonderful," Thorne said, patting my shoulder one last time. "Tell Merrick we will play golf on Sunday. And Vesper, stay out of trouble. Family is all we really have in this world." "I know," I said, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "I'm learning exactly what family means." I turned and walked out of the law firm into the bright September sun. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't breaking anymore. I took out my phone and sent a quick text message to Torin. "Put him at table 1, right next to the mayor. It was Monday, October 26th. Just 2 weeks before the big anniversary dinner. The trees on Elmwood Avenue had dropped all their brown leaves, leaving the front yard looking cold and bare. I was standing in Cressida's massive, spotless kitchen, organizing a stack of floral delivery schedules on the marble island. I hadn't moved back into the basement. I told my father that my new boss at a small local planning company needed me to work night shifts, so I could only come to the house during the day to plan their party. It was a lie, of course. My only boss was me, but it gave me the perfect excuse to be inside their house while they were busy, without actually being trapped under their roof at night. Merrick walked into the kitchen, wearing a fresh golf polo and expensive khaki pants. He poured himself a glass of sparkling water and leaned against the counter, watching me highlight the catering times. "You look healthy, kiddo," Merrick said, giving me a warm, easy smile. It was the exact same smile he used to charm his business partners. "I know we had a little misunderstanding a few months ago, but seeing you back here, helping your family, it means a lot to your stepmother. The real world is tough out there, isn't it? It's okay to admit you needed to come home." I kept my eyes on my paperwork. My pen paused for a fraction of a second, but my face remained completely blank. He honestly believed he had won. He believed I had failed at life and crawled back to him, broken and obedient. "The real world is definitely a learning experience, Dad," I replied, my voice soft and polite. "I'm just focusing on making November 12th perfect for you both." "Good girl," he said, patting the top of my head like I was a golden retriever. "Cressida and I are heading to the country club for a wine tasting. Tierney is at the mall. Calloway is upstairs playing his video games. Lock the front door when you leave, all right?" "I will." I waited until I heard his heavy SUV pull out of the driveway. I stood frozen in the kitchen for 5 full minutes, just listening to the silence of the big, empty house. Then, I put my pen down. I didn't walk towards the front door. I walked straight down the hallway to Merrick's private home office. The heavy oak door was locked, just like it always was. But I had lived in this house for 9 years. I knew that Merrick hid a small silver spare key inside the fake potted fern at the end of the hall. I dug my fingers into the dusty plastic dirt, pulled out the key, and unlocked the office. The room smelled like expensive cigars and old paper. I moved quickly. I didn't need to guess where he kept his important documents. I went straight to the bottom drawer of his heavy mahogany desk. It was where he kept the physical mail he didn't want Cressida to see. I pulled out a thick stack of annual trust disbursement approval forms and forged medical and residential receipts. They were freshly signed by Merrick. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were completely steady. I pulled out my phone and started taking crystal clear photos of every single page. There it was, printed in black and white. Every single month, a wire transfer of exactly $3,000 came from the Thorn & Cole Escrow Trust directly into Merrick's personal checking account. The attached audit letter from the trust overseers clearly read, "Proof of Vesper's continued residency and medical reliance at Elmwood required before final release of assets at age 27. Thorn was helping him fake a paper trail to keep the money flowing. He was still taking it. Even though I hadn't slept in that house for 8 months, he was still quietly draining my mother's trust money, legally claiming he was buying my food and paying for my shelter. It was solid, undeniable wire fraud. I took photos of the last 8 months of forged receipts. Then, I found something even better. A sticky note in Thorn's handwriting attached to the audit notice. "Merrick, make sure Vesper's current address is officially listed as Elmwood on the anniversary dinner public announcements. The trust auditors need to see she is fully residing under your roof before her birthday in January. Keep her happy until she signs." I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that promised absolute destruction. I took a picture of the email, carefully put all the papers back exactly how I found them, and locked the door behind me. I dropped the key back into the fake fern. When I turned around, my heart jumped into my throat. Calloway was standing at the end of the hallway. He was wearing mismatched socks and holding a broken blue toy car. His large brown eyes were watching me. He had seen me coming out of the locked office. I slowly walked over to him and crouched down so we were at eye level. I didn't treat him like a baby. I looked right into his sad, tired eyes. "Hey, buddy," I whispered. "Are you stealing from Dad?" Calloway asked. His voice was so small, barely a breath. He didn't look scared, just hopelessly confused. "No, Calloway," I said softly, reaching into my blazer pocket. I pulled out the chocolate chip granola bar I had brought just for him, and pressed it into his small hand. "I'm just taking back something that belongs to me. Something they hid." Calloway looked down at the granola bar, then back up at me. "Tierney said you came back because you're poor and you need us. but you're not staying in the basement anymore. Are you going to leave me again? My chest physically ached. The pain was so sharp it made it hard to breathe. I gently placed my hand on his small shoulder. I am never going to leave you behind, Calloway. I promise you, I said, making sure he heard every single word. Things are going to get really loud and really messy soon. When it happens, don't be scared. I am doing it so we can both be free. He didn't fully understand, but he nodded slowly, clutching the granola bar tightly against his chest. I stood up, gave him a small, brave smile, and walked out the front door. I pulled out my phone and sent the pictures of the bank statements and Thorne's email to Torin. We have the bullets, I texted him as I started my car. Now, we just need to load the gun. It was Tuesday, November 10th. Just 48 hours before the anniversary dinner. The main ballroom of the Norfolk Botanical Garden was massive. The ceiling had crystal chandeliers that looked like frozen raindrops, and the floor smelled strongly of fresh wax and lemon cleaner. I was standing on the main stage behind a wooden podium, tapping a silver microphone. Torin was kneeling behind the thick black curtains at the back of the stage. He was wearing a plain black polo shirt and a tool belt, blending in perfectly as a venue audio-visual technician. Check the feed, Torin whispered into a small two-way radio on his shoulder. I looked up at the giant white projector screen hanging directly above the head table. I pressed a small black remote control hidden in my blazer pocket. Instantly, the screen lit up with a beautiful soft focus video I had edited. It showed old photos of Merrick and Cressida smiling on a beach, with soft piano music playing in the background. It was exactly what Cressida had asked for. Video looks good, I whispered back into my headset. Okay, now hit the bypass switch, Torin instructed. I moved my thumb a fraction of an inch to the left and pressed the second, slightly textured button on the remote. The romantic piano music abruptly stopped. The smiling beach photo vanished. In place, projected 10 feet tall in crisp, bright definition, was the forged October residential support receipt from Merrick's locked desk. The words Thorne and Cole Escrow, Vesper Dependent Care and Maintenance, $3,000 glowed brightly across the room. I pressed the button again, and the screen flashed to Mr. Thorne's handwritten note instructing Merrick to commit fraud. The HDMI splitter works perfectly, Torin said, stepping out from behind the curtain. He wiped dust off his jeans. No matter what the DJ tries to do at the main soundboard, this remote overrides the main projector. You control the screen, Vesper. Nobody else. Thank you, Torin, I said, a deep sense of calm settling in my chest. Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom pushed open. I quickly clicked the remote, switching the screen back to the romantic beach photos just seconds before Cressida and Tierney walked in. Cressida was wearing large designer sunglasses inside the dimly lit hall. She carried a leather binder, her high heels echoing loudly on the wooden floor. Tierney trailed behind her, texting on her phone. Vesper, Cressida called out, her voice echoing sharply. She marched up to the front row of round tables and aggressively tapped a folded white napkin with her manicured fingernail. I distinctly asked for the swan fold on the napkins. These are folded into standard pockets. It looks like a cheap diner in here. I walked down the stage stairs, keeping my face perfectly neutral. The catering manager said the swan fold requires a stiffer linen, Cressida. With the soft silk blend napkins you chose, they wouldn't stand up straight. I can have them changed, but it will cost an extra $200 for the rush order. Cressida sighed loudly, pinching the bridge of her nose as if I had just given her a massive headache. Never mind, we don't have the budget to fix your mistakes right now. Just make sure the lighting is dim enough so people don't notice. She looked up at the projector screen. The fake romantic video was still looping quietly. Her face softened for a moment. Well, at least the tribute video looks acceptable. Did you make sure to cut out that terrible picture of me from the 2015 trip to Aspen? Yes, I said smoothly. I made sure only the most important details will be shown on that screen. Good. Cressida closed her leather binder. She looked at me, her eyes sweeping over my plain clothes. Now, Vesper, listen to me very carefully. On Thursday night, the mayor, 2 city councilmen and Mr. Thorne will be sitting right here at table 1. She pointed to the grand table positioned directly under the giant screen. I need you to stay by the kitchen doors, Cressida instructed, her tone lowering into that fake sweet voice she used when she was being cruel. We have a professional photographer coming for the Society magazine. I don't want you accidentally walking into the background of our family portraits. It's just, you look very tired lately, sweetheart. We want the family to look its absolute best for Merrick's business partners. She wasn't just telling me to stay out of the photos. She was reminding me that I was invisible. that I didn't belong in their shiny, perfect circle. 6 months ago, those words would have made me cry in the bathroom. Today, they didn't even leave a scratch. I completely understand, Cressida, I replied, forcing a small, obedient nod. I will stay in the shadows. You won't even know I'm there. Perfect, she smiled, genuinely pleased with her control over me. Come along, Tierney. We have nail appointments. They walked out, the heavy doors shutting behind them. The ballroom was completely silent again. I walked over to table 1. I picked up the beautifully written name card that read Mr. Silas Thorne, S.K., and carefully placed it in the center seat. It was the best seat in the house, the perfect angle to look up and read every single word on that giant screen. The trap was fully set. All they had to do now was sit down to dinner. It was Thursday, November 12th. At 7:30 p.m., the anniversary dinner was in full swing. The grand ballroom of the Norfolk Botanical Gardens smelled of roasted beef, fresh rosemary, and expensive perfume. Waiters in crisp white shirts moved silently between the tables, pouring the good champagne. Soft jazz music played from the corner speakers. From my spot by the kitchen doors, exactly where Cressida told me to stand, I watched the performance unfold. Cressida was holding a crystal glass, laughing warmly at a joke the mayor had just told. Her emerald gown glittered under the amber lights I had perfectly programmed. Merrick stood next to her, patting Mr. Thorne on the back. They looked wealthy, happy, and completely untouchable. Tierney was taking selfies by the floral arch, making sure the photographer got her best angle for the Society magazine. At table 1, right in the center of the room, sat the most important people. The mayor, 2 city councilmen, Aunt Linnea, Mr. Thorne, and my father. Cressida sat at the head of the table. Beside her was a small empty chair. Calloway was supposed to sit there, but he was hiding under a dessert table in the back corner, quietly playing a racing game on his iPad. I had slipped him a plate of chicken fingers 10 minutes ago so he wouldn't have to sit through the boring speeches. At 8:15 p.m., Merrick tapped his silver spoon against his crystal glass. Clink, clink, clink. The jazz music smoothly faded out. The low hum of wealthy conversation stopped. 200 faces turned toward the front of the room. Merrick smiled and adjusted his microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight, he started, his voice rich and full of deep emotion. 20 years ago, I married the love of my life, Cressida, and together we built a beautiful home based on honesty, hard work, and loyalty. Aunt Linnea, sitting across from him, stared down at her empty plate. She looked sick. Family is everything, Merrick continued, placing his hand over his heart. Through thick and thin, we support each other. We protect each other. That is the true measure of wealth. He looked toward the back of the room, right at me. I want to thank my daughter, Vesper, for helping set up tonight. She knows the value of hard work. The crowd gave a polite, quiet clap. It was a perfect piece of acting. He looked like a generous, loving father acknowledging his humble daughter. Now, Merrick said, turning toward the giant white screen hanging directly above his head, Cressida and I want to share a small video tribute to our journey together. Vesper, if you please. The lights in the ballroom dimmed perfectly. The crowd shifted in their seats, getting comfortable. I stood in the shadows. I reached into my black blazer pocket. My thumb rested on the small, textured button of the remote. My heart wasn't beating fast. It was completely steady. I pressed play. The giant screen lit up. Soft, beautiful piano music filled the silent room. A picture of Cressida and Merrick smiling on a beach faded onto the screen. The crowd let out a soft awe. It was a picture of a perfect marriage. I let them have exactly 15 seconds of their beautiful lie. Then, I moved my thumb a fraction of an inch to the left. I pressed the bypass switch. The piano music cut off with a sharp, ugly burst of static. The beach picture instantly vanished. The giant screen went completely black for 3 long seconds. The crowd murmured in confusion. Merrick tapped the microphone, looking annoyed. Just a small technical issue, folks. The screen flashed back on. It was blindingly bright. It wasn't a family photo. It was a massive, high-definition scan of the trust document with the state court seal. I had highlighted one specific paragraph in bright yellow. It clearly showed my name, my mother's name, and the Atlantic Freight property worth millions. The room went dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Before anyone could read the whole page, I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. Now it showed Merrick's private bank statement from October. The bright white numbers were 10 feet tall, glowing right above his head. The memo line was circled in thick red ink. Thorne and Cole escrow. Vesper dependent care and maintenance. $3,000. A loud, sharp gasp echoed from table 1. It was the mayor. He was leaning forward, his eyes wide, reading the giant numbers. I clicked the remote one more time. The screen flashed to the handwritten note. It was Mr. Thorne's message to Merrick. The giant black letters were impossible to miss. The trust auditors need to see she is fully residing under your roof. Keep her happy until she signs. What is this? A city councilman whispered loudly, turning to look at Mr. Thorne. Thorne's face turned completely white. He dropped his expensive silver fork. It hit his china plate with a loud clack. He reached up and nervously adjusted his glasses, his hands shaking violently. Merrick froze. The warm, charming smile melted right off his face. He stared up at the screen, his mouth slightly open, unable to speak a single word. Cressida slowly stood up from her chair. The crystal glass slipped out of her hand and shattered on the hard wooden floor. She started shaking, her eyes darting in panic between the massive evidence on the screen and the shocked faces of her wealthy friends. The perfect mask was entirely gone. I stepped out of the shadows and began to walk slowly down the center aisle of the ballroom, heading directly toward table 1. Every step I took down the center aisle sounded like a hammer hitting a nail. The soft fabric of my cheap black blazer brushed against the expensive silk chairs. I could feel 200 pairs of eyes on me, but I only looked at table 1. Merrick scrambled to find the switch on the microphone. He forced a loud, nervous laugh that echoed through the speakers, trying to save his image. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. It seems we have a terrible computer virus, a silly prank. He looked at me, his eyes wide and wild. He pointed toward the exit. Vesper, go to the AV room and turn that screen off right now. You are confused. I stopped at the edge of the dance floor, just 5 feet away from him. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. It's not a virus, Dad, I said clearly. My voice carried perfectly in the dead silent room. Mr. Thorne quickly stood up. He buttoned his navy suit jacket, trying to look professional, but a thick bead of sweat was running down his cheek. Vesper, this is highly inappropriate, he said, using his deep, authoritative lawyer voice. This is a private, complex legal matter. You do not understand how trusts work. We will discuss this in my office tomorrow morning. Turn it off. Your office? I asked, pulling a thick manila folder from under my arm. The office where you signed legal papers saying I sleep at Elmwood Avenue? The office where you helped my father commit wire fraud and fiduciary malpractice by faking my medical and residential support bills for 8 months? You had every legal right to drain my joint account, Dad, but defrauding a federal trust is a guaranteed prison sentence. Cressida lost her mind. She stepped around the table, her emerald gown catching on a chair. She pointed a shaking finger right at my face. You ungrateful little brat, Cressida screamed. The sweet, polite society voice was completely gone. Her face was red and twisted. We gave you a roof. We fed you. I had to endure your miserable face in my house every single day. We kept this family from going bankrupt while you did nothing. We deserved that money to survive. The entire ballroom gasped. Merrick closed his eyes in defeat. Cressida hadn't realized it in her anger, but she had just confessed to everything in front of the most powerful people in the city. The mayor slowly stood up. He threw his soft silk napkin onto his half-eaten plate of roast beef. He looked disgusted. Merrick. Silas, he said, looking between my father and the lawyer. Is this true? Have you been stealing from this young woman's trust fund to pay for this party? Merrick held his hands up, taking a desperate step toward the mayor. Gideon, please, listen to me. You know how expensive it is to maintain our lifestyle. The business deals, the networking. I was doing it to protect the family. She's too young to handle that kind of wealth. I was just managing it until she was ready. He still believed he was the hero. He really believed stealing my money was the right thing to do to save his fake image. I walked up to the table and dropped the manila folder right in front of the mayor. It landed with a heavy slap on the white tablecloth. These are the physical copies of the bank transfers, I said. And the emails. Do whatever you want with them. Suddenly Aunt Linnea stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the wooden floor. Her face was wet, and tears were pouring down her cheeks. Merrick, stop it, Linnea cried out, her voice breaking. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Just stop. You drained her savings account for Tierney's credit cards. You stole her mother's land. You lied to all of us for years. I won't let you lie anymore. Merrick stared at his sister, completely shocked. The woman who had stayed quiet for 20 years, the one who always kept the peace, had finally found her voice. Mr. Thorne didn't say another word. He didn't defend my father. He just picked up his leather briefcase, turned his back on Merrick, and practically ran toward the side exit, leaving his VIP dinner behind. He knew his career was over. People at the other tables started standing up. The whispers grew into loud, angry conversations. A woman in a red dress grabbed her purse and walked out the main doors. Then another couple followed. The perfect 20th anniversary party was falling apart piece by piece, right in front of Cressida's eyes. I looked at my father one last time. He looked small. He looked old and defeated. "You always told me family was everything," I said softly, looking right into his panicked eyes. "You were right, but you are not my family." I turned my back on table 1. I didn't look at Cressida, who was now sobbing into her hands. I walked straight toward the back corner of the room, heading toward the dessert table where a little boy with a crooked bow tie was waiting for me. I lifted the heavy white tablecloth covering the dessert station. The space underneath smelled like vanilla frosting and dusty floor wax. Calloway was sitting on the hardwood floor, his knees pulled up to his chest. His iPad was dark. He was pressing his small hands over his ears to block out the sounds of yelling and breaking glass from the main room. I crawled under the table and sat next to him. I gently pulled his hands away from his ears. He looked at me, his brown eyes filled with tears. "Are the police coming?" Calloway whispered. His small shoulders were shaking. "I don't know, buddy," I said honestly. I didn't want to lie to him. Real life doesn't have magical shields. Dad and your mom did some very bad things with money. Now they have to answer for it. It is going to be really loud at your house for a while. Calloway swallowed hard. He looked down at his crooked bow tie. "Are you going back to your office? Can I come with you? I don't take up a lot of space." My heart broke into a million pieces. The pain in my chest was so heavy. I wanted to pack him in my car and drive away forever. But I knew the law. I had no legal right to take him. If I drove away with him, I would be arrested for kidnapping. I had to do this the right, legal way. "I can't take you with me tonight, Calloway," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, cheap, prepaid cell phone I had bought yesterday. I pressed it into his hand. "But I put my number in this phone. You hide it in your backpack. Whenever you are scared, or whenever you just want to talk, you call me. I will always answer. I am going to fight for you in court, okay? I am going to get a lawyer and ask a judge to let you live with me." Calloway gripped the small black phone like it was a lifeline. He nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. Suddenly the white tablecloth lifted. Aunt Linnea bent down. Her mascara was smeared under her eyes, but she looked stronger than I had ever seen her. "Calloway, sweetheart," Linnea said softly. "Go grab your jacket. You are going to come sleep at Aunt Linnea's house tonight. Your parents are going to be very busy talking to some important people." Calloway looked at me. I nodded. He quickly crawled out from under the table. Linnea looked at me in the dim light under the table. "I already called my lawyer on the way over here," she whispered. "I am taking these documents to Child Protective Services tomorrow morning to file for kinship foster care. When their bank accounts are frozen tomorrow, they won't even be able to feed him. They are not going to drag that little boy down with them." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Linnea had finally stopped being a silent watcher. She had chosen loyalty over blood. "Thank you, Linnea," I whispered. "No, Vesper. Thank you," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "You broke the mirror. It was about time we all looked at the broken pieces." I crawled out from under the table. The ballroom was completely chaotic. Waiters were rushing to clear tables. Guests were whispering and hurrying toward the exit. Cressida was sitting in a chair, staring blankly at the wall. Merrick was frantically pacing, shouting into his cell phone. I didn't stop to say goodbye. I walked straight through the heavy wooden double doors and stepped out into the cold November night. Torin was leaning against his white work van in the parking lot. He held out a cup of hot coffee. The steam rose beautifully into the chilly air. "Ready to go home?" Torin asked. I took the warm cup. I took a deep breath of the fresh, crisp air. For the first time in 9 years, my chest felt completely light. "Yeah," I smiled. "I am." It was Sunday, January 14th, 2024, my 27th birthday. The winter morning air in Virginia was freezing, but inside my new office on York Street it was warm. The room smelled like fresh espresso, new paint, and expensive leather. I sat behind a heavy oak desk. Across from me sat Mrs. Gable, my new corporate lawyer. She slid a thick stack of legal papers across the polished wood. "Happy birthday, Vesper," Mrs. Gable said softly. "Sign on the blue tabs, and the Atlantic Freight property is officially under your full control. The escrow funds have been completely transferred into your new business account." I picked up my silver pen. I didn't rush. I signed my name carefully on the bottom line. Over $400,000 in back rent was now mine. Mrs. Gable packed the documents into her briefcase and clicked it shut. Merrick's defense attorney called me again yesterday. He wanted to know if you would write a character reference letter for his sentencing hearing next month. The wire fraud charges carry a minimum of 3 years. I looked out the large glass window. The street was quiet and covered in a thin layer of white frost. No, I said smoothly. Tell them I have absolutely nothing to say. A few hours later, the mail carrier dropped off a thin white envelope. The return address was a cheap apartment complex on the edge of town. Cressida and Merrick had lost the Elmwood Avenue house to the bank just before Christmas. I opened the envelope. The handwriting was Merrick's. Vesper, I know you are angry, but I am your father. Blood matters. Cressida is struggling to get out of bed, and Tierney had to drop out of her internship to work at a grocery store. We are suffering. Please, just call me. Families forgive each other. Love, Dad. I stared at the word love. 10 years ago, that letter would have made me run to them with my checkbook. Now I just felt a quiet, heavy sadness for a man who still didn't understand what the word meant. He didn't want a daughter. He wanted a rescue boat. I didn't tear the letter up in anger. I didn't cry. I just calmly slid it into the black paper shredder next to my desk. The machine hummed loudly, turning his words into tiny, meaningless strips of paper. Suddenly, the glass front door of the office chimed. Calloway ran in, wearing a bright red winter coat and a warm beanie pulled down over his ears. He looked heavier, healthier. His cheeks were pink from the cold. Aunt Linnea walked in right behind him, carrying a white bakery box that smelled heavily of sweet vanilla and warm cinnamon rolls. We brought breakfast, Linnea smiled, taking off her thick wool gloves. Calloway didn't wait for me to answer. He ran around the edge of the desk and threw his small arms around my waist, hugging me tight. I closed my eyes and hugged him back, resting my chin on top of his head. Torrin walked out of the back server room, wiping dust off his hands with a small towel. He grinned at Calloway. Hey buddy, you want to see the new computer setup? The cooling fans light up green. Yeah, Calloway cheered, letting go of me and running over to Torrin. I stood behind my desk, watching them. Linnea was pouring hot coffee into ceramic mugs, laughing warmly at a joke Torrin made. Calloway was asking a million questions, completely safe and genuinely happy. I looked at the empty paper shredder, and then back at my office filled with light, laughter, and warm food. I didn't share a single drop of blood with Torrin, and Linnea had spent 20 years ignoring my pain. But they were the ones standing here in the light. They were the ones who showed up when the walls finally fell down, and they were the ones who stayed to help me clean up the mess. I picked up my coffee cup and took a deep breath. The old version of me, the quiet girl who slept in a damp basement waiting for a scrap of kindness, was gone forever. I had finally built my own house, and I was exactly where I belonged. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know. If you've ever had to cut ties with your own family, a hard boundary, the kind that left you feeling alone but finally free, I want to hear about it. And drop your story in the comments. You're not alone in this. If this video moved you, hit like and share. Not for me, for the person in your life who needs to hear that walking away from a toxic home isn't weakness, it's pure strength. And if you want to hear another story exactly like this one, there's a link in the description. I think you'll connect with it. I'll see you there.